Black CEO, removed from first-class seat for white passenger minutes later, she bought the airline. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Move to coach now, ma'am. The command cracked through the first-class cabin like glass on metal. A uniformed flight attendant, blonde hair pinned to regulation perfection, navy sleeves razored sharp at the wrist, stabbed a finger towards Seat 2A. Conversations died mid-syllable. Champagne flutes paused mid-glint. Every eye drifted to the woman in the red suit. Nia Carter did not look up right away. She finished the sentence she was typing, slid her phone to her ear, then raised her gaze calm, unhurried, the way a pilot checks the horizon before banking 1,000 tons of aluminum into the wind. I paid for this seat, she said, voice level, and I'm staying in it. From behind the attendant, a man in a pale blue shirt hovered near the aisle, the beneficiary waiting to inherit the seat she was being ordered to surrender. He offered a thin, apologetic smirk that wasn't an apology at all. 2 rows back, a woman pretended to scroll while her camera found focus. Another passenger's mouth curled into the small, eager smile people wear when they sense they're about to witness someone else's humiliation. The engine hum held a steady, indifferent C note. Daylight spilled across leather and polished chrome, bright and clinical surgical light for a social operation. It's a weight balance issue, the attendant announced to the cabin, as if reading from scripture. And you're not on our pre-cleared list for first class today. Please gather your things. Nia's eyes moved to the nameplate pinned above the woman's heart. Miss Hargreaves, she said softly, check your manifest again. I already have, Hargreaves snapped. The authority in her tone, polished smooth by 1,000 small victories nobody contested. Coach, now. A cough of laughter leaked from somewhere in row 3. The man in the pale blue shirt shifted closer, his hand already on the overhead latch as if the space were his by gravity. The camera phones rose higher, sleek black predators sniffing the air for blood. Nia placed her passport on the tray table like a chess piece tapped into position. The gold crest caught the light. So did the tiny chip embedded in the spine, quiet proof she belonged anywhere on Earth. What is the policy, she asked, still even, on removing a paying passenger from a confirmed seat to accommodate another? Ma'am, Hargreaves replied, teeth barely parted. Policy is what keeps you safe at 37,000 feet. We make the calls, you follow them. There it was, the catechism of control. The room inhaled as one organism. If humiliation could be a sport, the starting pistol had just fired. Nia rose. Not quickly, not defensively. She stood the way skyscrapers do, by existing. The red suit tailored, architectural caught on the air's cool edge. A single tendril of hair framed a face that had learned long ago how to make silence louder than shouting. On what grounds? She asked, eyes steady. Hargreaves leaned in, her breath mint cold. On the grounds, she whispered, perfectly audible. That first class is for first-class passengers. Somewhere, a knot of laughter tried to form and failed. The man in blue glanced at the lenses aimed their way and straightened, performing decency for the record. The plane's door was still open. Terminal air feathered in, carrying the sterile tang of jet fuel and the perfume of impatience. Nia's phone vibrated once against her palm. She didn't look at it. Her attention stayed on Hargreaves, then slid to the ring of faces, curious, nervous, hungry. She could feel the cabin tilting, not by degrees of altitude, but by degrees of presumption. Ma'am, a second crew member said from the galley, rehearsed empathy coating each syllable. We'll get you a complimentary drink in coach. Video Wiles. Duo. 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 Nia smiled faintly, no teeth. Just the idea of one. Keep it, she said. The attendant's finger reappeared. Surgical. Accusatory. Last time. Move. To coach. The word coach hung in the air like a slur that needed no dictionary. Phones tilted for a better angle. Somewhere in row 1, a businessman mouthed to his seatmate, she should just go. Nia lifted her phone. The camera lenses twitched, disappointed. No tears, no pleas, no scene. Just a call. Her voice dropped to a register that made steel sound soft. "Hi, it's me." 3 words, almost gentle. But somewhere very far from gate A12, a dozen dashboards flickered awake. Before we continue, the narrator's voice glides in calm, cinematic, deliberate. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change, and we're glad you're here. Now, back to Nia. Hargreaves folded her arms, victory rehearsed in posture. Security will assist you if you won't comply. Security will stand down, Nia said into the phone, still not breaking eye contact. A sliding door in her tone opened onto something larger. Initiate review protocol on Flight 7A. Mark this interaction. Timestamp, now. On the jet bridge, a ground agent's headset chirped. In an office 2 floors above the concourse, a supervisor with a badge that unlocked doors most people didn't know existed, paused mid-email and looked at a name that glowed like a flare. Carter. Niar. Back in 2A, the oxygen felt cooler. The passengers didn't have words for what they felt, so they named it inconvenience. But the room knew. The room always knows when the weather changes. Hargreaves' earpiece pinged. A voice, tight and strange, poured into her skull. Her chin lifted, then faltered a degree. She tried again, leaning on procedure like a crutch. "Ma'am," she said, "let's not make this difficult." Nia's gaze softened pity without permission. "Difficult," she murmured, "is living on other people's definitions of you. This is simple." She set the phone down, screen black. The hum of the engine swelled not louder, just closer, like the plane itself had leaned in to listen. "Here is what will happen," Nia said. "Not for the crew, not for the man in blue, but for the record the cabin had become. You will check the manifest. You will read the name you missed, and then you will make a choice about the kind of sky you work for." From the galley, the captain's voice edged into the cabin speaker, too casual for the urgency it carried. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're sorting a minor seating matter and will depart shortly. Thank you for your patience." Their C's filed botters and texts. A bead of sweat gathered at Hargreaves' hairline and refused to fall. Her jaw moved, but the words arrived late to the runway. "Let's step into the galley, ma'am." Nia's answer was a soft blade. "No. If the humiliation is public, the correction will be too." Silence. Then the airplane made a sound no one had heard before. A collective, involuntary swallow. The lenses lowered by an inch. Respect, or fear, or the recognition that a tide had turned and no one wanted to be standing on the wrong shore when it came in. The ground agent appeared in the doorway, cheeks flushed from urgency he couldn't show. He leaned toward Hargreaves, whispered something that turned the color of her certainty a shade paler. Hargreaves straightened. Protocol hovered like a ghost between them. She opened her mouth. Nia sat back down in 2A, buckled the belt with a quiet click that sounded, to anyone listening closely, like a verdict landing. Somewhere far away, a system updated. Somewhere closer, a story did too. The cabin didn't breathe for a full 10 seconds. Then, like a tide receding, whispers began to crawl down the aisle. The hum of the engines seemed louder now, no longer background, but pressure. A steward at the far end shifted nervously, pretending to count drink cups that didn't need counting. Something invisible had changed. The air felt ionized, metallic, like the moment before lightning decides where to strike. Nia Carter remained in her seat, eyes forward, fingers folded neatly over her phone. She didn't move, didn't blink, didn't even sigh. Stillness had become her armor. Around her, the performance of authority began to unravel. Hargreaves, the flight attendant, tried to reassert control. "Ladies and gentlemen," she said into the microphone, her voice brittle, "please remain seated while we finalize a brief manifest correction." Her colleague at the galley mouthed, "Manifest correction?" but said nothing. The phrase hung in the air, too technical to question, too hollow to calm anyone. The man in the pale blue shirt, the would-be passenger of Sate 2A, hovered awkwardly near the aisle. His confidence from moments ago had evaporated. He glanced at Nia, then away, then back again, searching for some cue that might excuse his complicity. There wasn't one. From row 3, a woman whispered, "What's happening?" A man replied under his breath, "She's not ordinary, that's what." Nia heard them. Her eyes drifted toward the window, where the light had turned colder. Clouds passed like slow artillery, heavy and white. The world outside was indifferent. It always had been. Inside, the temperature had dropped, and not because of altitude. The seatbelt sign chimed again, ding, a sound meant to reassure, now weaponized by discomfort. Hargreaves straightened her jacket, tried again, softer this time. Ma'am, perhaps we could speak privately, just to clarify things. Nia turned her head. The motion was deliberate, precise, like the slow tracking of a satellite aligning with its target. You wanted public clarity, she said. Let's have it. Her tone wasn't sharp. It didn't need to be. Each syllable landed with surgical control. Across the aisle, a teenager pretending to watch a movie lowered her screen brightness just enough to keep recording. The red REC icon glowed faintly in the reflection of her sunglasses. In the cockpit, the captain's interphone lit up again. The call came from ground operations. He frowned, adjusted his headset, and muttered, "That was fast." "Everything all right, sir?" asked his co-pilot. He hesitated. "Apparently our passenger in 2A isn't who we thought she was." Back in the cabin, turbulence of another kind rippled through the crew. Radios buzzed softly. Short coded messages began to cross channels. Authority verification. Chain of command review. Hold departure. Passengers sensed it before they understood it. A low murmur spread curiosity laced with guilt. Even the engines seemed to hesitate, throttling down a fraction as if the plane itself were waiting for permission to keep pretending nothing had happened. Nia's phone buzzed again. She lifted it to her ear. "Yes," she said quietly. "Proceed." That was all. No raised voice, no drama. Just proceed. She ended the call, looked up at the attendant still standing over her, and smiled. Not victory, certainty. "Please," she said, "take your seat. The captain will brief you shortly." Hargreaves blinked, confused by the phrasing. She opened her mouth to protest, but was interrupted by a soft tone from her earpiece. The voice on the other end was not her supervisor's usual drawl. It was corporate, clipped, and very aware of hierarchy. "Miss Hargreaves," it said, "stand down and remain professional. The passenger in 2A is to be accommodated fully. No further action." She froze. I don't understand," the voice repeated, slower. "Do not engage further. A representative will meet the aircraft on landing." A representative. Every crew member knew what that meant. Corporate, legal, audit. The color drained from her face. Around her, passengers were already exchanging glances, realizing they were inside a story bigger than their flight to Dallas. The man in blue muttered, "What the hell's going on?" "In the Destry Dads and Mother on Doll. They won in from dollars." No one answered him. From her seat, Nia watched the entire social order rearrange itself in real time. The attendants avoided eye contact. The pilot's voice returned over the intercom, measured but tense. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to hold our position momentarily before pushback. Thank you for your patience." No one moved. No one dared. The teenager's camera kept recording the still image of a woman in red, serene amid unraveling authority. Somewhere in the lower corner of that frame, a timer ticked upward. 0 hours, 2 minutes and 17 seconds. 0 hours, 2 minutes and 18 seconds. 0 hours, 2 minutes and 19 seconds. Inside that silence, Nia thought not about revenge, but about precision. For years, she had watched systems fail people like her, and learned how to build systems that couldn't. Today, one of those systems had just turned itself toward justice. The hum deepened again as the engines prepared for taxi, unaware or perhaps entirely aware that they were carrying a revolution disguised as routine. A flight attendant near the curtain whispered, She's someone important." The purser replied, eyes wide, "She is the flight manifest." And just like that, the hierarchy inverted. No raised voices, no grand gestures, only the slow, inevitable descent of truth like cabin pressure equalizing after a storm. The atmosphere had dropped, and it wasn't going back up. When the world first heard the name Nia Carter, it wasn't attached to scandal or spectacle. It was attached to Equation's flight algorithms that redefined how planes saved fuel and avoided turbulence. She had been 24, working nights at an aerospace lab that smelled like cold metal and caffeine. Her badge said junior engineer. Her paycheck said barely survival. Her mind, however, was somewhere above the clouds. That was the first life, the invisible one, the one she built before she had a face that could terrify a corporation with a single phone call. Now, Sitting in seat 2A, she could almost see that younger version of herself in the reflection on the cabin window, the girl who used to press her forehead against glass outside airports, counting takeoffs, believing that flight was the closest thing to freedom. She hadn't known that freedom, in the world she was born into, always came with an asterisk. After graduating top of her class, Nia had joined Aerostar Systems, a subcontractor supplying technology to every major airline in North America. She was the only black woman in her division. During lunch breaks, she'd sit alone in the courtyard, pretending to read manuals while listening to jokes that turned her identity into a punchline. She learned early how silence could be both shield and weapon. Her first invention, a predictive airflow module that saved carriers millions in fuel costs, was published under another engineer's name. She didn't complain. She filed the patent in her own company instead. Quietly, legally, unforgivably. By 32, Aerostar was in bankruptcy court. By 33, Carter Aerospace Technologies had bought its remains, patents, factories, staff, everything. She kept the same engineers, even the one who had stolen her work. He now reported to her executive assistant. That was the beginning of her myth. The woman who built empires from other people's arrogance. She had never wanted fame. She had wanted efficiency, control, altitude. But empires have their own gravity. When airlines began fighting over her technology, she founded Apex Aero Holdings, a global consortium merging aerospace design, aviation logistics, and green fuel research. Within 5 years, she was richer than several of the airlines combined. Within 10, she owned majority stakes in 4 of them. One of those airlines was the one she was flying on today, the same logo painted on the tail outside her window. She watched the reflection of that logo shimmer across the glass, inverted by sunlight. To the passengers around her, it was a brand. To her, it was a ledger line in a balance sheet, a reminder that power could be quiet and still absolute. "Excuse me, Miss Carter." The voice pulled her back. It was a younger attendant, eyes cautious, voice trembling. She carried a bottle of water and an apology that didn't belong to her. "I just wanted to say, I'm sorry about what happened earlier." Nia turned her head slightly. The girl's uniform was a little loose, her hands not yet practiced in the choreography of servitude. "What's your name?" Nia asked. "Riley." "Thank you, Riley. You did nothing wrong." Riley hesitated, then leaned closer, whispering, "Is it true that you own part of this airline?" Nia's gaze softened. "Not part of it." She paused, letting the words fall with gravity. "Enough of it." The girl's eyes widened just as the intercom beeped again. "Cabin crew, prepare for pushback." Riley retreated, heart racing, eyes darting to the senior attendant who had caused the scene. The hierarchy she'd worshipped a few minutes ago suddenly looked fragile, like frost on glass under sunlight. As the plane began to taxi, Nia closed her eyes. The rhythmic vibration through the fuselage felt familiar, comforting. She could almost hear her grandmother's voice layered over it, soft, firm, carrying the cadence of prayers disguised as advice. "Don't fight them loud, baby. Fight them right." Her grandmother had worked as a cleaner at an airport for 30 years. She used to come home with stories about people who would drop trash on the floor while thanking God for flight. "They look at the sky and forget who scrubbed the floors that get them there," she used to say. Nia had promised her that one day, no one in their family would ever be mistaken for someone who didn't belong. She kept that promise. She just never realized how much the world would resist it. A message flashed on her phone. Apex HQ protocol update confirmed. Review team dispatched to gate 12. Another notification followed. Incident flagged to CEO account. She smirked. Flagged to CEO? She thought. I am the CEO. The irony wasn't lost on her. Power in modern systems was so automated that it sometimes forgot who had written the code. She scrolled once, checked the live feed from the airline's internal portal already. The algorithm she'd created for customer experience auditing had triggered. Every camera on that aircraft was now logging behavior, tone, sequence. Not for revenge, for record. Data didn't lie. The captain's voice returned, steadier this time. Flight 7A is cleared for departure. Cabin crew, please take your seats. The engines roared to life. The vibration deepened into a bass note that rattled the window frames. Nia looked out again as the runway blurred into motion. For the briefest second, she felt the same thrill she'd felt as a girl. Lift. But this time she wasn't rising to escape anything. She was ascending to prove that altitude was her native language. In row 4, a passenger whispered, "She doesn't even look angry." Another replied, "That's what makes it worse." If they had looked closer, they would have seen that Nia's eyes weren't calm. They were calculating. Behind that stillness lived an entire network of consequence, ticking quietly toward revelation. And as the plane lifted off the tarmac, carving its way through a sky too bright to see clearly, the first headlines were already being drafted by unseen hands. Breaking. Airline under investigation after discrimination allegation on Flight 7A. Source confirms passenger involved is Apex Holdings CEO. The world was about to learn who Nia Carter was. The people on that plane would learn first. At 30,000 feet, the seatbelt light blinked off with a hollow ding. For most flights, that sound meant freedom. Today it sounded like a warning. Hargreaves, the senior attendant, hadn't spoken in nearly 40 minutes. She moved through the aisle with a stiffness that came from too much training and not enough humility. Each passenger she passed lowered their gaze, pretending to read, pretending not to remember. But memory had a scent recycled air and shame, and it lingered. When she reached row 2, she paused, tray of champagne trembling slightly in her hands. "Would you like a drink, Miss Carter?" The words were polite, but her eyes betrayed the panic of someone who'd received a phone call that changed everything. The captain had told her, "Just be courteous and let corporate handle it when we land." But no one had told her how to be courteous to the person who could end her career with one sentence. Nia looked up, gaze calm but direct. "No, thank you." Then quietly, "You can stop performing." Hargreaves blinked. I just wanted to apologize for earlier." "No," Nia said. "You wanted to preserve your record." The tray trembled again. A few drops of champagne spilled onto her glove. The scent of citrus and alcohol filled the silence. From the far end of the cabin, a man's voice rose, the same one from before, the entitled passenger who'd been given her seat. "Excuse me, are we getting any actual service up here? It's been almost an hour." The attendant's head snapped toward him, like a puppet pulled by string. "Yes, sir. Right away." She started to turn, but Nia's voice anchored her mid-step. "Let him wait." It wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. The tone carried weight, not anger, not revenge, just law. Hargreaves froze. "Ma'am?" Nia's eyes flicked toward her phone screen, now open in her lap. Lines of text glowed across the display, the internal command interface of Apex Holdings. 3 words pulsed softly at the top. "Review protocol active." She tapped once. The screen responded. "Confirm escalation?" Nia's thumb hovered for a second, then pressed yes. Somewhere in the system, in a server room cooled to Arctic precision, a cascade of actions began. Human resources notification, legal audit, triggered flight record, captured employee status pending review. Back in the cabin, her phone dimmed, silent as judgment. She turned to the window, watching the clouds fracture beneath the wing like islands of broken glass. The irony tasted bitter. She had designed these safety systems, written the ethics code, built a company that claimed to champion equality in the air. And yet here she was, proving it had to be enforced from the top down. "Miss Carter," the captain's voice crackled softly through her armrest speaker. "This is Captain Reynolds. We'd like to apologize for any discomfort you've experienced. We've been notified that corporate representatives will meet us upon landing in Dallas." "Thank you, Captain," she replied, tone even. "Please ensure the flight crew complies with all company standards until then." "Yes, ma'am." The ma'am landed heavier than turbulence. A few rows back, the man in blue looked uneasy now, shifting in his seat, sensing the current had reversed. He caught her gaze for the briefest second and looked away. He didn't yet know it, but by the time they landed, his name would also appear in an internal memo, "Witness to discriminatory incident, subject to interview." The plane cruised smoothly above the clouds, but inside, pressure built. Hargreaves sank into the jump seat, staring blankly ahead, whispering something to herself. The words were lost under the engine drone, but her lips formed the shape of prayer. Nia didn't celebrate. She didn't smile. She simply adjusted her seatbelt and closed her eyes, voice calm as steel. "Consequence isn't cruelty," she murmured. "It's balance." Her phone buzzed once more, a new message. "Audit confirmed. HR en route. PR drafting statement." She locked the screen, folded her hands, and exhaled. Below them, the clouds parted into ribbons of silver. The world looked peaceful from above. the way hypocrisy always did from a distance. And as the plane continued its quiet glide toward Dallas, one truth crystallized in the hum of the engines. Sometimes, power doesn't need to announce itself. It just corrects altitude. Dallas appeared first as a line of gold on the horizon. The plane began its slow descent, the skyline flickering through layers of cloud like a city deciding whether it wanted to be seen. The passengers, tired of tension but afraid to move, adjusted their seatbacks in perfect obedience. For 40,000 feet, the sky had belonged to Nia Carter. Now, the ground was preparing to catch up. Hargreaves busied herself with final checks, her voice trembling as she read the landing script. Cabin crew, prepare for arrival. She couldn't stop glancing toward seat 2A, where Nia sat motionless, phone balanced on her knee. It wasn't anger that filled that silence. It was control, and control had gravity. In the airline's glass tower downtown, Apex Operations Command was already in motion. On the 42nd floor, where most employees didn't even know a live control room existed, a red alert pulsed across monitors. Protocol 7A, CEO Audit Request, Priority 1. A team of managers huddled around the display, their coffee forgotten. One of them, a middle-aged director named Valdez, swore softly. Jesus Christ! Who triggered this? His assistant replied without looking up. CEO account. Valdez's throat went dry. As in the CEO? Yes, sir. Across the room, someone added. Same flight code as the discrimination flag on social media, Flight 7A. Valdez stared at the screen. A live feed was playing from the aircraft's internal cameras, silent, time-stamped, crystalline. The footage showed the moment Hargreaves had raised her voice, the gesture toward the white passenger, the dismissive smirk. Every second logged and archived. He watched the playback and felt the blood leave his face. Get legal on this. Now. Back on the plane, the captain's voice returned, too calm to be genuine. Ladies and gentlemen, we'll be landing shortly. Please remain seated as we await final taxi instructions. Beneath the measured tone, a trace of something else bled through unease. The cockpit had received a direct transmission from Apex Corporate Security, an instruction that no one on board had ever heard before. Hold position after gate arrival. Executive team inbound. The captain had asked for clarification. The reply came in 2 words. CEO present. Nia opened her eyes. She could feel the vibration change as the landing gear extended, the subtle dip in altitude that told her they were committed to descent. She slid her phone into her jacket pocket, adjusted the cuffs, and straightened her posture. Across the aisle, the man in blue shifted nervously. He'd spent most of the flight trying to shrink inside his designer jacket. Now he was starting to realize the truth. Everyone else had missed. The woman they had humiliated didn't just have influence. She was influence. He tried to smile. Miss Carter, I don't, she said without looking at him. The engines roared as the wheels met the runway, the sound deep and final, like a gavel. When the doors opened, the air felt heavy, electric. On the jet bridge, 3 men in dark suits and an older woman with a badge that read, Apex Holdings, Legal Affairs, were waiting. The ground staff whispered among themselves, phones in hand. The woman stepped forward, professional smile fixed in place. Miss Carter, welcome home. We'll escort you directly to the executive lounge. Nia stood. The cabin fell silent again. Every movement she made seemed to bend the air around her, slow, deliberate, measured in power rather than speed. She turned once toward the aisle. Hargreaves and the man in blue sat frozen, pale and upright, as if still awaiting permission to breathe. Please remain seated, Nia said softly. Corporate will speak with you shortly. Her tone wasn't cruel. It was administrative. And somehow that made it worse. She stepped into the jet bridge. The hum of the engines faded behind her, replaced by the clicking of heels on aluminum. The suited team followed at a respectful distance, speaking in low, urgent tones. At the terminal, chaos had already blossomed. Passengers from the flight gathered near the gate, whispering as a flood of alerts hit their phones. Viral video from Flight 7A, Airline accused of racial discrimination. Within minutes, hashtags bloomed across every platform. Number first class while black. Number Nia Carter Airlines. Number accountability altitude. The video showed the entire confrontation, crystal clear. 10 seconds of humiliation, followed by 5 words that had already become legend. If it's public, so is correction. In the executive lounge, a dozen screens displayed the same footage. PR executives scrambled, rehearsing statements. A senior spokesperson muttered, "We need to say she was offered compensation." The legal director interrupted, eyes locked on the door. "No, we need to say she owns the company." The room went still, because at that moment, the door opened, and Nia Carter walked in. Her presence did what corporate memos never could. It silenced hierarchy. "Miss Carter," Valdez said quickly, rising from his seat, "we're already investigating." "You're not investigating," she interrupted. "You're containing." He swallowed hard. She moved closer to the central table, her reflection multiplying across glass walls and screens. "I built a company that promised the sky was for everyone, and yet 40,000 feet above the ground, I had to remind your employees who signs their paychecks." "Miss Carter," another manager started, "this was an isolated—" She cut him off. "Nothing that repeats itself is isolated." Her voice was calm, but the air around her tightened. She placed her phone on the table, the video still looping silently on its screen. "Effective immediately. Suspend the staff involved. Launch a full cultural audit across all divisions, every training, every supervisor, and release a public statement within the hour." Valdez hesitated. "A statement from whom?" "From me," she said. Outside the glass, reporters were already gathering. Camera flashes hit the windows like distant lightning. Nia turned toward them, her silhouette framed against the skyline. "Tell them," she said to the PR lead, "that we don't need to fly higher. We need to fly fair." The woman nodded, already typing. And as Nia walked past the table toward the waiting press, one of the managers whispered to another, disbelief dripping from his voice, "She just fired half the chain of command." The other replied quietly, "No, she just reminded them who the chain belongs to." Idbana said her all, somewhere deep inside the company's network, a single line of code updated under her authorization. Executive status change, Nia Carter. Owner, Apex Holdings. Primary share 100%. The system blinked, and the logo on the top right corner of every internal monitor shifted by one word. From Skynova Airlines to Carter Air Group, the reveal was complete, not through press releases or lawyers, but through precision, through silence that had finally learned how to roar. By the time the plane's wheels cooled against the tarmac, corporate justice had already begun. Every airline system, from payroll to personnel, hummed like a circuit of consequence. In the Dallas terminal, passengers from Flight 7A watched a scene unfold they'd never forget. The flight attendants who once commanded the cabin now sat in a small waiting area. Uniforms still perfect, faces pale beneath the fluorescent lights. Their name tags, Hargreaves and Miller, gleamed like warnings. Across from them stood two Apex investigators in gray suits, silent except for the rhythmic click of tablets recording statements. "State your name and position," one of them said. The attendants obeyed automatically. Voices brittle. "Describe the incident." The pause stretched. I asked the passenger to move." "Why?" I believed she wasn't. Qualified for first class?" The investigator finished, tone flat. Hargreaves nodded once, tears threatening but not permitted. A second investigator turned toward a camera mounted above the gate. Timestamp 1547. Interview logged. The airline's internal justice system had never moved this fast. But then, it had never been activated by the owner herself. In the executive lounge, Nia watched from a glass-walled office overlooking the runway. The view was cinematic. One plane rising into the sunset, another taxiing beneath her window, each a metaphor in motion. Her assistant entered, tablet in hand. "Corporate HR has completed preliminary findings. 3 suspensions, 1 termination recommendation." "Make it 2, Nia said. The second attendant followed orders but didn't intervene. The assistant hesitated. "That's still grounds for?" "For silence," Nia said. "And silence is endorsement." She turned back toward the window. A child pressed her face against the terminal glass outside, waving at a departing jet. For a fleeting second, Nia saw herself there again, the little girl who once believed flight belonged to everyone. She whispered almost to herself, "I'm just restoring that truth." Downstairs, the public statement went live. Carter Air Group official release, CEO statement. "Our skies are shared by every dreamer who dares to rise. Discrimination has no altitude." Effective immediately, Apex Holdings has suspended crew members involved in Flight 7A pending review. We stand for dignity, equity, and excellence in the air and on the ground. Nia Carter, CEO and owner, Carter Air Group. The words spread faster than the jet stream. By the time the statement hit news feeds, hashtags were already trending across 3 continents. Inside the terminal, passengers began realizing who had been sitting among them. "That woman in red," one whispered. "Wait, she's the owner?" A teenager who'd recorded the confrontation looked at her phone in awe. This video just hit 5 million views. It's Juan. The clip now included the landing scene, the suited investigators, and a single line of text across the screen. When justice boards the flight, turbulence follows. Meanwhile, at corporate HQ, senior executives convened for an emergency video call. Screens glowed in the dim room. Valdez, looking exhausted, addressed them all. This isn't just about one flight. She's initiating a system-wide audit. Training, recruitment, leadership, everything. Another director sighed. "She's making us rebuild the entire culture mid-air." "Good," Valdez said quietly. "It's about time someone did." Back at the gate, Hargreaves looked up as an investigator closed his tablet. "You'll receive further notice via HR," he said. "For now, hand over your badge and crew credentials." Her hands trembled as she unclipped her name tag. It fell into his palm with a faint metallic click, the sound of a career ending politely. Passengers walking past slowed to watch. A few recognized her from the video. None offered comfort. The hierarchy had inverted, and everyone could feel it. The investigator turned to his partner. "Case logged. Proceed to next review." Nia's voice came over their earpieces, calm and clear. "Ensure every crew member involved is treated fairly and transparently. This isn't vengeance. It's correction." The sun dipped below the terminal roofline, painting the glass walls in gold. Nia walked out to the observation deck, wind tugging at her hair. The planes rose one by one into the orange haze, her fleet, her sky, her statement. Behind her, the PR director approached cautiously. "Miss Carter, the media wants to know what happens next." Nia didn't turn. Her eyes stayed on the sky. "Next," she said, "we fly better." And as another plane roared upward, the faint reflection of its wings crossed her face, not a symbol of power, but of peace restored by precision. Justice, at 30,000 feet, had finally landed. By the time Nia Carter's flight rolled into its gate, the story had already circled the globe. In New York, a TV anchor said her name like it was a headline made of thunder. In London, commentators debated the ethics of quiet retaliation. In Johannesburg, Nairobi, and Lagos, social feeds pulsed with one phrase: "Black woman stayed calm and rewrote the sky." The video was everywhere. The teenager's clip from row 3 had become the most shared footage in the world within 4 hours. It opened with the insult, cut to Nia's stillness, then froze on her line that now lived rent-free in every caption. "If the humiliation is public, the correction will be too. You need a gay otter." In intent. Millions commented. Tens of thousands stitched, duetted, analyzed. The algorithm didn't just amplify it, it crowned it. In a crowded cafe at LAX, a group of flight attendants huddled around a phone. "Did you see this?" One whispered. "She's the CEO." Another shook her head slowly. She didn't even raise her voice. The oldest among them, gray streaks in her bun, smiled faintly. That's how power really sounds. At a university in Atlanta, aviation students replayed the clip during class. Their professor paused the projector mid-frame, pointing to Nia's composure. "This," she said, "is what history looks like before it knows its history." The memes came next, some respectful, others awestruck. A still image of Nia in her red suit with the caption, "Unbothered, unmoved, unmatched, and ride my crasta down in ROB. In ride Silva C-Sin." Another, "When they tell you to move to coach, but you own the plane." Hashtags swarmed like constellations. Number, "Fly with respect." Number, "Nia Carter Airlines." Number, "Altitude of dignity." Even brands tried to keep up. Competitors released statements about diversity and inclusion. Talk show hosts made monologues about prejudice in first class. Everyone wanted to orbit the calm fury that had shifted public airspace. But Nia didn't post a single thing. She didn't need to. Her silence was trending by itself. In her hotel suite overlooking the Dallas skyline, Nia watched the news coverage without expression. Every channel replayed her face, her quote, her name. Her assistant entered quietly. "Ma'am, PR says we've gained 7 million new followers across platforms. Every outlet's asking for an interview. Nia muted the TV. We don't respond to chaos. We respond to culture. So, no interview? Is to wow. Not yet. Let them talk. The noise proves it mattered. The assistant hesitated, then smiled. You just grounded half the internet. Nia looked out at the glowing runways below the slow ballet of takeoffs and landings. Order in motion. Not grounded, she said softly. Redirected. Meanwhile, the world was turning that red suit into a symbol. On TikTok, women stitch videos wearing crimson blazers, standing tall in airports. In London Heathrow, a billboard appeared overnight. A silhouette of a woman in red captioned, "Respect has boarding priority." And in Chicago, a little girl pressed her hands against a shop window displaying a news image of Nia's face. "Mama," she said. "She looks like me." Her mother smiled. "That's the point, baby. She's showing you what up looks like." Corporate analysts tried to frame the moment as a PR phenomenon. But in the quiet corners of social media, the places where stories travel like whispers, something else was happening. Flight attendants shared posts about bias they'd witnessed. Travelers recounted their own experiences of subtle exclusion. People who'd never flown first class still felt like passengers in Nia's victory. One comment stood out beneath a viral post. She didn't argue. She didn't shout. She just reminded the sky who built the wings. In that Dallas hotel suite, night deepened. Nia sat at her desk, scrolling through the avalanche of reactions. She stopped at one photo, a grandmother sitting on a porch, wearing a red scarf, holding a sign that said, "For every time we were told to move." Nia exhaled slowly. The sound wasn't exhaustion, it was release. Her phone buzzed again, a message from her head of communications. Trending in 42 countries. Stock up 11%. Public sentiment, 97% positive. Nia typed 2 words in response. Let it breathe. She closed the laptop and looked toward the window. Outside, a plane rose through the dark, wing lights blinking in rhythm. For the first time that day, she smiled small, certain, unstoppable, because while the world saw a viral moment, she saw what it really was. Not a scandal. Not revenge. A signal, a message written in silence and altitude, reminding everyone that dignity, once airborne, doesn't land quietly again. Morning broke over Dallas with the kind of light that makes glass look like fire. From the top floor of Apex Tower, Nia Carter stood before a wall of windows, the skyline reflected in her eyes. She hadn't slept, not from fatigue, but from purpose. The phone on her desk vibrated once. Her CFO's voice came through, calm but electric. It's done. Acquisition cleared overnight. You now hold 100% controlling interest in Skynova Airlines. Nia didn't smile. Then the sky just changed hands. She turned toward the boardroom, where 12 executives waited like jurors who already knew the verdict. The long glass table gleamed under morning sun, and on every tablet lay the same headline, Breaking. Apex Holdings acquires Skynova Airlines CEO Nia Carter, finalizes full takeover. For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The acquisition was worth billions, the kind of move that rewrote hierarchies, erased divisions, and left competitors scrambling to make sense of how she had done it overnight. She didn't explain. She never did. At the far end of the table, Valdez, the same director who'd managed the crisis hours earlier, spoke first. Miss Carter, congratulations. With this merger, you effectively own the airline that tried to remove you. In writing and Prabratchan and that right of Altant. Nia's gaze drifted over the polished table, her voice a steady undertone. Correction, she said. I didn't own it. I reclaimed it. A few exchanged uncertain glances. She continued, for years I invested quietly, watched how they treated their customers, their staff, their standards. Yesterday wasn't humiliation, it was confirmation. It showed me exactly how much still needed fixing. She tapped a tablet. The screen came alive with a new logo, Carter Air Group. The font was elegant, aerodynamic, a brand reborn. Effective immediately, she said. Skynova's entire equity, staff, and infrastructure transfer under Apex's oversight. We'll integrate new leadership, new ethics, new training. Every flight, every crew, every voice will know who we are now. Her tone was calm, but the air in the room vibrated like engines before takeoff. Down in the city streets, the world caught up. News anchors called it the most poetic corporate reversal of the decade. Talk shows ran side-by-side clips, the attendant shouting, "Move to coach now," against the morning's headline. She bought the airline. Stock tickers rolled green across every screen. Skynova's valuation doubled in a single trading session, now under the name Carter Air. At airports across the country, crews gathered around monitors showing the company's new logo. Some applauded, some just stared in disbelief. In Atlanta, an older maintenance worker folded his arms and said quietly, "About time someone flew us right." Back in the boardroom, a younger executive raised his hand. "Miss Carter, the press is calling this revenge. Should we clarify the motive?" Nia's eyes met his steady, unblinking. "Revenge is emotional," she said. "This is structural." She stepped closer to the window, looking out at the sky, her company now owned. "They tried to remind me where I didn't belong, so I reminded them who decides the seating chart." A ripple of quiet laughter moved through the room, not out of humor, but awe. Her assistant entered with a folder. "Final signatures, ma'am." Nia took the pen, clicked it once. The sound echoed like a gavel. Her signature flowed across the page, clean, deliberate, irreversible. Within the hour, a video statement appeared on Carter Air's official channels. Nia's face filled the screen, calm, centered, unadorned. No music, no filters. "Yesterday, I experienced what too many people endure every day, the weight of assumptions. But here's the truth. Assumptions can't fly. Facts can. And the fact is, this airline now belongs to a company that believes in equity, dignity, and accountability. We don't fire people to make examples. We teach the system not to need them." The clip ended with the new slogan appearing in white over a field of blue sky. Carter Air, the sky belongs to everyone. In living rooms, boardrooms, and break rooms around the world, people watched that 30-second video in silence. Then the applause began, digital first, then real. At the Dallas airport, the same gate where Flight 7A had landed the day before was now draped in new banners. A young agent, eyes wide with pride, whispered, "We work for her now." From her office above the clouds, Nia Carter looked down at the city, waking up beneath her empire. She whispered to no one, "Justice doesn't descend, it takes off." The Valapeter dattered, and as the first Carter Air flight taxied down the runway, new logo gleaming under the sunrise, the sky itself seemed to bow. Finally, to the woman who owned it. 2 months later, the world still hadn't stopped talking about her. The phrase, "she bought the airline," had outgrown its headline. It had become a proverb. It meant grace under pressure. It meant winning without shouting. It meant being unshakable in a world built to test your composure. But for Nia Carter, it wasn't a story. It was a start. On a warm spring morning, she stood on the tarmac of Atlanta International, the birthplace of her grandmother's dreams. A line of journalists waited behind security ropes, cameras glinting in the sunrise. Behind Nia stood the first jet painted in Carter Air's new livery, a sweep of deep crimson cutting through silver, bold and unafraid. Across the fuselage, in gold lettering, the words shimmered, "Fly Equal." A small crowd of students in aviation uniforms gathered near the wing, their expressions a blend of awe and disbelief. These were the first scholarship recipients of the Fly Equal Foundation, Nia's new initiative funding education for women of color in aerospace and flight engineering. She didn't give them a speech at first. She let them feel the moment, the roar of distant departures, the scent of jet fuel, the hum of possibility. Then, softly, she spoke. "My grandmother cleaned floors in airports like this," she said. "She used to say, 'Some of us build dreams for others to fly.'" She paused, letting the words breathe. "I think she'd like to know that today, we're teaching others to build their own wings." The applause wasn't loud, it didn't need to be. It was steady, like wind beneath something newly airborne. In the background, reporters shouted questions. "Miss Carter, do you see yourself as an activist now? Do you forgive the employees who insulted you?" Nia smiled faintly. "Activism speaks to the world. Leadership teaches it how to listen. And as for forgiveness," she added, "I never needed to forgive anyone. I just needed to fix the altitude." The crowd laughed gently, but they understood. Later, inside the terminal, she walked past the very gate where everything had begun. It looked ordinary, now no cameras, no tension, just travelers juggling luggage and coffee cups. But the memory lingered in the air, invisible but indelible. She paused by the window, watching a Carter Air jet lift into the blue. Its ascent was smooth, unhurried, dignified, the perfect metaphor for everything she had built. Behind her, her assistant approached. "The board wants to know what comes next, Miss Carter. Expansion? Partnerships?" Nia turned slightly, eyes still on the sky. "No," she said. "Not next. Now. We don't expand, we evolve." That afternoon, a short video appeared on Carter Air's official channels. It wasn't flashy, just a montage of new recruits, mechanics, engineers, and pilots, women and men of every background, working side by side. Over the images, Nia's voice narrated, "Every flight is a lesson in trust. Every passenger is a story we carry above the clouds. Power isn't loud. Dignity doesn't shout. Justice doesn't need applause, it needs endurance. We are Carter Air, and this sky belongs to everyone." Many. The video ended with a slow aerial shot of the crimson and silver jet rising into the sun, contrails curving like handwriting across the horizon. That night, in the quiet of her office, Nia poured a single glass of champagne. She didn't toast to victory. She toasted to velocity, to everything that moves forward without losing grace. She looked at a framed photo on her desk, her grandmother, smiling in her janitor's uniform, holding a mop like a scepter. Beneath it, the inscription read, "She kept the floors clean, so I could touch the sky." Nia whispered, "We made it up here." Outside, another Carter Air jet took off into the dark, its lights fading into constellations. And for a long, reverent moment, the woman who had turned humiliation into altitude simply watched, calm, unshaken, radiant in silence, as the night swallowed her legacy whole and sent it flying toward tomorrow.